Good morning. Thank you for joining me on this webinar this morning. I just want to explain a few housekeeping. The webinar is approximately 45 minutes and I will invite questions at the end. So if you have any questions at all, please type them into the chat pod and then I will try and get through as many as I can at the end of the webinar. Also, just to let you know that the webinar is being recorded. So I will email out the recording to you for your future reference. So I just want to start by giving you a little bit of an explanation about myself, really, introduce myself. I set up Helen Pettifer Training in 2016. Predominantly training on customer service. That is the background I have. I was a customer service manager. And following a brief conversation that I had February last year, February 2018, the seed was planted in my head about the important subject of vulnerable customers. And I spent the majority of last year researching and training and finding out as much information as I possibly could. I interviewed lots of individuals and charities and organizations to really build up as much knowledge as I could. And based on all that, I launched my vulnerable customer training programs in November 2018. This is a subject that is very close to my heart because my eldest son, Daniel, he's 21, he has learning disabilities, and it's been it's come to light as he's grown and become an adult that there are some challenges he faces when it comes to making decisions and interacting with organizations, especially with regards to his finances. We've had a particular experience, unsuccessful experience with passing security on telephone banking. So I've got sort of the professional knowledge, but I've also got that personal experience as well, which I do bring to all my training courses, and an insight into all my webinars and that. So vulnerable customers, the whole subject of vulnerable customers is a very hot business topic at the moment. There's a number of regulatory bodies. They're reviewing their guidelines, they're reviewing strategies, and just coincidentally, actually, the FCA published their draft guidance consultation on Tuesday. I've printed off my copy, and I'm working my way through that and dipping in and out and reading that. Also, about 6-8 weeks ago, Ofgem published their draft revised vulnerable customer strategy, and that is now still in its consultation period. So you can see that the regulatory bodies and organisations are really putting a big emphasis now on vulnerable customers. And because it's come to light over the last few years that consumers in vulnerable circumstances are far more prevalent than was ever believed. Earlier this year, the FCA, in a report in their research, they identified that up to 50% of an organization's customer base could be facing vulnerable circumstances. And this was a significant gap between what the organizations themselves thought, and they placed it at only 5%. So you can see that there was a big difference in organizations' perceptions on vulnerability, and then putting in place the support to actually recognize and support those individuals. And vulnerability comes in so many guises, so many different circumstances. It could be health, and it will affect us at any time. With regards to our health, maybe we're having an illness that's just been diagnosed, or we're just feeling under the weather. And also just life events as well. Life events can really impact our ability to think clearly, think rationally, weigh up all the information and make a well-informed decision that is in our best interests. And when I interact with organisations, the most common question is, we really do want to support our vulnerable customers, but how will we know if the customer is in a vulnerable circumstance and they need our support? And this is ultimately why I decided to put this webinar on, because I'm thinking organizations really need to start to encourage customers to share information, share how we can support them, what their needs are, and that's all around disclosure. So I want to start by looking at the benefits of actually customers sharing information, sharing what their needs are, and how it can benefit both. And I'm looking at it from both the customer's point of view and also from the organization's point of view. So I've just got a couple of benefits. So ultimately, when a customer's come into an organization, they have a desired outcome that they're looking to achieve when they are interacting with that organization. And by them explaining and letting the organization know what their needs are and how they can be supported to actually achieve that outcome, it helps them to have those needs acknowledged and addressed, and they can actually then successfully achieve what they're looking to do. And from the company point of view, that actually the staff can be equipped to support that customer. If the staff, excuse me, has the training and the resources and the autonomy to actually fully support that customer, the organization will benefit as well, and that's a real benefit as well. Also, as well, it's not just a case of looking at how you can support that customer today. It's looking at that relationship and how you're going to take that relationship forward and how you're going to support that customer moving forward and in the long run. So vulnerability is very fluid. It changes. Our needs change on a day-to-day basis. And by having that relationship with the customer, by starting that conversation, you can discuss what the current needs are and actually how those needs are likely to change in the future and what support you're going to need to put in place to help that customer as that relationship develops and they become a sort of a regular, loyal customer. And ultimately, from the organization's point of view, you want to build that strong relationship and build a brand loyal ambassador who's actually going to be a repeat customer and even hopefully recommend you and refer you to others. And finally, the final benefit I want to share with you is actually, if a customer is able to tell you what their needs are, you're able to put systems, processes, and support in place to actually address those needs and prevent any further harm or any further vulnerability taking place. Ofgem work with utility companies, and around their vulnerable customer strategy, there's a big emphasis on customers who are self-disconnecting from their prepayment meters. So customers who are on a prepayment meter, they're topping it up regularly with some cash, and they hit a financial challenge, and actually customers are self-disconnecting, so they're actually going without electricity and gas, which is vital for your physical health and even for your mental health as well. So by having that conversation with the organization to say we're struggling financially, it can then prevent further harm and further vulnerable circumstances taking place. And ultimately, it improves the reputation of the organisation, because organisations want to be building a reputation as a company that cares. They care about their customers, and they care about how their customers' lives are impacted by their vulnerable circumstances. So that's just a few benefits of actually encouraging customers to disclose information. And I just want to share with you sort of around the whole disclosure, what sort of information you do need to be looking to obtain. And I want to emphasize that you're not looking for a full diagnosis. You don't need to know ultimately that the customer has dementia or has just had a cancer diagnosis. What you are looking to receive from the customer is actually, what are their needs? How can you support them? And in the conversation, it may come out what their full diagnosis is, but ultimately, it's all about identifying those needs. How can we help you achieve what you're looking to achieve with our organisation? So that is ultimately what you're looking to encourage disclosure from the customers. So next, I want to just highlight four barriers. There are lots of barriers to the customer not disclosing information. I just want to highlight four for you this morning. So the first one is, they may be customers that actually are not aware of their needs. So I put my son, into this category. He has special needs, he has learning disabilities, and he's not really fully aware that he's very different to everybody else. He's not always aware that he has different needs or that he needs support. So this can actually be a really challenging barrier to overcome, and it helps to maybe find out if they have somebody who is supporting them. So Daniel has me as his mother, and he has a carer, so there's somebody there to support him in achieving his desired outcome and what he's wanting to achieve. It may also be people who may be living with dementia, and as the dementia progresses, maybe they're not as aware of what their needs are. And also into this category as well, I would put people who are maybe looking to buy a car for the very first time, maybe on finance, or somebody who's looking to buy a new house for the very first time. So they have very limited knowledge of the industry, of the products or the service. They are very inexperienced. So they may not be aware that they have needs, and that they may need support in actually making the right decision for them. There was a story on the news recently about a young lady who was a student at university, and she bought a car, a brand new car on PCP, and of course she wasn't particularly knowledgeable on all of the finance in the car industry, and she's ended up now being in debt because the monthly payments were far too much, and she had very limited knowledge. So but she didn't want to share that. She wasn't aware that she didn't have all that information. So that's one of the barriers, is actually people not being aware of what their needs are. The second barrier I want to discuss is, they may actually be reluctant to admit needs, that they have needs and they need support. So this could be people who are living with addiction, or people who are in an abusive relationship. It may also be somebody's saying out loud something for the very first time. If they've had a loved one that's passed away, a close partner or relative that's died, actually saying those words for the very first time can be very challenging for them. And they may not want to actually verbally or write it down and express their needs, because they're still coming to terms with it themselves. And it may also be people whose responsibilities and circumstances have changed. One of my friends, her mother is now caring for her father, because her father, in his 70s, he had a fall, he broke his hip, and he's not mobile anymore. So the mother is taking on the caring responsibilities of looking after her husband. But when pressed about that, and sort of saying, you need support because you're caring, she said, no, I'm not caring, I'm his wife, that's my duty, I'm not his carer. So it's kind of admitting that that you may need additional support because your responsibilities have changed. So that's another barrier as well to people disclosing what their needs are. The third one is this one's a big topic. It's all about trust and confidence with that customer. Have they got the trust and the confidence in the organization that what they're about to share is going to be well received, it's going to be taken seriously, it's not going to have a detrimental effect to what they're wanting to achieve, what their outcome is. It may also be that it may give them a negative effect if they're looking to achieve something. Maybe they're on benefits and they're looking to get some finance or something. They might feel that their benefits may be taken away from them. It's really, really important to reassure discretion at this stage, and reassure them that actually their data is not going to be lost. There's a lot of news around data breach, and obviously with GDPR coming into play last year as well with regards to sensitive data, they may be reluctant to give you too much information because they don't know where it's going to be stored, how it's going to be stored, and who's actually going to be able to view that, and how it's going to be used in the future. So trust and confidence is a really big barrier to disclosure, and it will be industry specific, or it may be just organization specific. If you have a good relationship with your customer and you're having that conversations with them regularly, then you build up that trust and that confidence, and they feel more able to share any of their needs and any support that they need. So the last one I just want to talk about today is opportunity, and this is another big one as well. It's actually some customers are not given the opportunity to share information. So whether this is over the telephone, a lot of call centres have their calls timed. The staff are on KPIs to wrap up a call in a specific time frame, and customers are not going to be disclosing personal and sensitive information at the beginning of a call, and it may take a while for that information to come out during a telephone conversation. So by taking people off of timed calls and allowing that conversation to naturally take place, you have a greater chance of the customer sharing relevant information as well. I do want to give you a couple of examples here on opportunity. The online bank Monzo they have a little page on their app that says share with us, and they're allowing people the opportunity to share anything specific, anything that's relevant to how Monzo will interact with them. So it may be that they want to explain, don't call me, I prefer to receive emails or text messages, or I'm struggling to meet payments this month on some of my bills. It's a way of just giving the customer an autonomy to actually share as much or as little information as they choose to. I recently filled in a form on Barclays, and this was one of the pages that came up, and I had to take a screenshot because I thought this is perfect. But it's allowing me the opportunity to write in that box if there is anything that I would like Barclays Bank to know about me at this stage or even moving forward. So they have given me the opportunity to share that. What I do want to say is that trust and confidence and opportunity really do go hand in hand. Because although Barclays have given me the opportunity to complete this box, if there is no trust and confidence in my bank, I would be very unlikely to complete that box and give them the information. So it's really important that those two, building trust and confidence in the brand and giving customers the opportunity, you have a far greater chance of customers sharing information with you, and then being able to meet those needs and fully support the customer in achieving their outcome. So I did mention GDPR as well. And this is a question that does come up. And I did have a phone call with the ICO last year when I was doing all my research, because I knew that this would be a conversation that many customers would be interested in. And actually, I was interested to see that the FCA have put a section in their guidance consultation report this week on GDPR. So I really do want to encourage you to read that, because it's really interesting. I've just picked out a couple of snippets from that. So you really do need to understand what your lawful basis is for obtaining and storing and sharing the customer's personal data. And that all comes under Article 6 in GDPR. And there is also under Article 9 is the special category data, and this would cover health, race, sexual orientation, all of those really sensitive personal data. And it may be that on some of the information that you're given by the customer, that information would fall into this special category data. And then there are guidelines on how you should store that and share that as well. What I do want to emphasize is that even if the customer's not identifying the health issue itself, but they are saying what their needs are, it may be that what their needs are might infer what the health issue is. So, for example, a customer might ring up and say, can you send me some information in Braille or large print? It would infer that there is probably a health issue with their eyesight. So I would probably put that information into the special category data, because it is then coming under the health category. So what I do want to really emphasize is just ask yourself the key question: what is relevant to know in the purpose of helping the customer achieve what they're wanting to? And as I was expressing earlier, it isn't always necessary to have the full diagnosis. All you may need is actually, how can we support you to achieve this? Do you need large print? Do you need us to email you rather than post, or telephone, give you telephone calls rather than post? So it's thinking about the customer's needs and how you can support them in achieving what they're looking to achieve. And that's a really key question. What is relevant to know in the purpose of helping the customer? And then it's really, really important that all the information that you receive from the customer is recorded accurately. Obviously, if a customer is filling in forms online, they've completed that, you can almost guarantee that it's accurate to them. But if you've got staff that are taking information over the telephone, it's absolutely key that the staff member actively listens, they take notes, they ask questions, and they really clarify and can ask the customer to confirm that what they have understood is absolutely accurate and complete. Because how you record that is very sensitive, and how you store it and share it as well. So it's absolutely absolutely important that the information that you've got and you've written down is accurate. So as an organisation, there are 4 key things that I'd like you to take away from this webinar today. The first one is, it's really, really important that you have a vulnerable customer strategy that has clear objectives, clear desired outcomes that you're wanting to achieve, and that every single member of staff has access to that strategy, has clear processes on how that customer is going to be supported throughout the whole of the customer journey. There are many vulnerable customer strategies online. I've got the Off-Gem one that's available to download online. So there's lots out there that you can actually use as templates or get an idea of what should be included. It's absolutely paramount that your staff are trained to identify and fully support vulnerable customers. And I don't mean just the training that I offer, but I do want to really encourage you to get your staff out and about into the community, get them volunteering their time and their services and their skills with charities and organisations that are supporting vulnerable customers. Get them to speak to customers and find out exactly what their challenges are and sort of what we can do to help. That's a really powerful learning tool as well. And a lot of charities and a lot of organizations do actually deliver bespoke training on their particular vulnerable group. So I've completed dementia training with the Alzheimer's Society. I've completed training with the National Autistic Society. I've done suicide prevention awareness training and loss and bereavement training with crews. And I'm also learning sign language. So there's so many different resources and different training courses out there. Some are online, some are classroom based. And if you want any help, I'm happy to send you a list of some of the resources that I've built up. But it's absolutely crucial that your staff are given the confidence, the skills, the autonomy and the resources to actually fully support every single one of your customers. It's absolutely paramount that you and your organization create a culture that encourages customers to disclose information. And going back to the trust and the confidence and the opportunity, create a culture where customers can feel confident and safe to share information, and they are given the opportunity to do that. And I also want to just really emphasize the point, this is also for internal, create an internal culture as well, because actually you may find that your staff members are actually going through vulnerable circumstances too. So by creating a culture internally where staff feel happy to share information, share their needs, and share any information about their vulnerable circumstances, they feel safe and confident to do so as well. And the last one is I would like to really encourage you to regularly review the entire customer journey right from the very beginning. Put yourself in the customer's shoes and look at every single stage of the customer journey. And from this point of view, what I would like you to really analyze is at which points can we start to build trust and confidence with our customers, and at which points can we provide opportunities. And I don't just mean just give them one opportunity to share information. You need to be given them lots and lots of different opportunities. So as their trust and their confidence builds, they're always given opportunities to share relevant information on how you can fully support them. So look at the whole of the customer journey and look at the gaps that you've got and think about all the different opportunities that you can put in, whether that's over the telephone, whether that's in writing, whether that's online. Think about all the different ways that you can encourage the customer to share that information. So that's really sort of what I wanted to share with you today. It's very brief. It's a very, very big topic, as I'm sure you're aware. And these are really my thoughts and findings on this. But I really do want to encourage you to start thinking about some of the barriers that you've got in your organization that may be stopping customers from sharing that information with you. And then start thinking about how you can provide opportunities for your staff to have that conversation and keep that conversation going, so you can fully support the customer moving forward as they build that relationship with you. And obviously, if I can help in any way, I've got some vulnerable customer training programs for frontline staff and also for managers as well. So if I can help in any way, then please do get in touch. I would love to have any ideas or any of your thoughts on this important subject as well. So please feel free to get in touch if there's something that I touched on today that you want to elaborate on, or if there's something I didn't talk about today and you think actually that's just as equally important, then please get in touch and feel free to share. So is there any questions? Does anyone have any questions? I haven't seen any come up in the chat pod now, but if you do have any questions, I'll give you a brief time to just type something in. Okay, I really do hope that you've found this this webinar beneficial. And if there's any questions that you've got moving forward, maybe you think of something a little bit later, please do get in touch. Oh, there is a question come up. So you talked about trust and confidence as a barrier to disclosure, a key customer concern being how information is going to be used in the future. In line with GDPR, we need to explain how information recorded will be used and shared. At the point of recording information, do we need to be given notice about potential to share information with third-party providers, such as passing information to third-party suppliers that may act on the company's behalf in partnership? I would say yes, it's very, very important that you do share that information and how that information is going to be used. You may need to simplify that depending on the person that you're speaking to, the customer that you're speaking to. You may need to simplify that and put it into terminology that they would understand. But it is important that you share with them that how that information is going to be used, and also as well explain to them how it will benefit them, that if you do have this information, explain the benefits to them and sort of help them to understand that it is in their best interest that you are taking this information and you are sharing it. And do encourage them as well to come back to you and say, look, if your circumstances change at any time, please do let us know, because it's important that we continue to meet your needs. So yes, as much as you possibly can and in the best possible way, share with the customer exactly how their information is going to be used. And if you're able to, pass on the name as well of the third party that you're going to be sending that information to. It's all about being transparent and not having anything hidden from that customer. It's their information at the end of the day. That's the whole point of GDPR, is that that information belongs to that customer and they are giving you consent to actually hold that information and store it and share it as appropriately. Obviously, ensure that you are sharing it appropriately with the right person and it is to their benefit. I hope that's answered that question for you there. So another question's come in. Oh, sorry, let me just read it back up again. How do we make the distinction between everyday challenges that most people will experience and things that represent real vulnerability? It can create a tendency to over-report vulnerability. People's resilience to deal with different scenarios affects how vulnerable, if at all, someone might be. It's such a grey area and difficult to implement consistently. I completely agree. It is a complete grey area and everyone is different and everyone will be affected differently. Just even with this hot weather, some people absolutely love the hot weather. Some people are just not getting any sleep at all at night. So sort of over a continued period of time of no sleep, it can really affect you and sort of affect your ability to make rational decisions. So it is all a case of having that conversation with the customer and encouraging your staff to maybe sort of just think about taking things in context. And it may be that you may not identify a vulnerable customer in that first conversation, but it may be a bigger picture that builds up over time. And I do want to emphasize that you're not always going to get it right. There are going to be times where you maybe sort of identify someone who is vulnerable and actually it's not the case, or likewise you might miss an opportunity to identify someone and actually sort of they are actually in a vulnerable situation. So it's all about just listening and taking on board what the customer's saying, how they're saying it. Maybe think about what they're saying, and is there a bigger picture? Can you pick out something from what they're saying or their emotions behind what they're saying, and sort of build up that bigger picture? And as you get to know your customers, you can then start to identify. And it might be that someone does just have a short-term vulnerability. It might be that they're just under the weather for, with flu for a week or something. But actually the following week they're feeling that much better. So it's sort of understanding the levels of vulnerability as well. And sort of some vulnerability circumstances may be slightly more severe than others. So I hope that has helped as well. So there's another question here. So I'm interested to discuss this webinar with my team and wanted to provide any examples of key questions for customers that are not aware they are vulnerable or feel reluctant to admit needs. I feel this is a very delicate area. Could you share any examples? Yeah, more than happy to. So based on what you would be hearing from the customer, some of the questions you might ask is there somebody that can help you to make this decision? Depending on sort of the industry that you're in, is there a preferred way you'd like us to communicate with you? Some people have sensory issues and don't like speaking over the telephone. So you can be, depending on the customer, you can be very direct. Is there a particular way that we can support you? Or you can be more gentle and ask, is there someone we can speak to? Do you need any help with the decision that you need to make? Have you got all the information you need? Things like that. I can sort of take this question offline, and we can talk about that a little bit more as well. And I can maybe get some more sort of industry specific questions for you. But it is all about just trying to sort of ask open questions. So what, how, can you tell me, can you describe, those sorts of questions where they're actually asking for information. Whereas closed questions can be very yes or no. So you're wanting to encourage people to give you information. So open questions are very, very good for this. So someone's put here, so could someone be vulnerable just for one interaction but not in general, e.g. due to sleep deprivation? Absolutely. I mean, sort of some people can just be vulnerable just for that one particular day, because lack of sleep can really impact your ability to think clearly. And the definition I use for vulnerable customers is the Mental Capacity Act, where it describes people who are unable to receive the information, retain the information, and use that information to make a well-informed decision. So it is all about decision making, isn't it? Especially when it comes to finances or something that's very, very significant in your life. It doesn't matter if you can't make a decision in the supermarket about what to have for dinner, chicken or pork or whatever. But actually, when it comes to your finances or something that really will impact your future life, then having that mental clarity to be able to make a well-informed decision is absolutely key. And if you haven't had a good night's sleep the night before, your mental clarity is not going to be at its best. So it can really impact the decision that you make. But obviously that is short term. So I hope that has answered that question as well. So some really great questions there, and hopefully I've managed to answer them for you. So I really do hope that you found it of benefit, and if there is something you'd like to discuss further, then please do give me a call. And I wish you all the very best with supporting every single one of your customers. And it is key actually to remember that it's all of your customers matter, not just your vulnerable customers. So sometimes we can put more of an emphasis on the vulnerable customers, but actually every single one of your customers is just as important. So and unique. So everybody will want to be dealt with in a very different way. So I really do hope that's helped, and I wish you all the very best. Thank you very much for joining me today. Thank you.